It was a sunny Saturday mid-morning as Jamie lay on the couch in front of the television. "I didn't know you liked cartoons," Mrs. Banks said after entering the living room and looking at the television screen. "I don't," Jamie snapped. "Then why have you been watching them for the last 2 hours? Why are you giving me the third degree?" Jamie yelled as she harshly turned off the television and stood up. All the anger she'd been holding in for the last few days had finally surfaced. "Jamie Mel Banks!" "I'm sorry," Jamie muttered, suddenly feeling ashamed. She knew her mother only used her full name when she was really upset. "What's troubling you?" Mrs. Banks asked gently in a somewhat nervous tone. "I can tell there's something wrong." "This is so embarrassing," Jamie said, while avoiding eye contact with her mother. "Remember how I told you and Dad that I had a good time at the dance? Well, that wasn't true. As soon as I got there, I discovered that Craig had 9 other dates." "Why would he do such a thing?" Mrs. Banks asked in shock. "It was for a bet. If he could get 10 dates, he'd win $40. "Oh, Jamie," Mrs. Banks said as she wrapped her daughter in a hug. "I'm so sorry. Sometimes boys don't mature as quickly as girls, and they just don't realize how their actions hurt other people. Believe me, Jamie, those boys will regret this one day." "I know, Mom, but that's not my main problem." "Something worse has happened?" Mrs. Banks asked with a slight quiver in her voice. She instantly thought back to the day when Jamie had been blessed by Madeline. "Much worse," Jamie stated. "Stephanie has suddenly forgotten who I am. She pretends that she doesn't even know me." "That's absurd," Mrs. Banks gasped. "You two have been friends for years." Jamie said nothing. Instead, she lowered her head and tried to force back her tears. "I'm not sure what's going on," Mrs. Banks began, while thinking this all seemed a bit too odd. "But what I do know is that your father and I will always love you." "Thanks, Mom," Jamie said with a small smile. "I really needed to hear that." "That's why I'm here," Mrs. Banks replied, as she affectionately smoothed Jamie's hair. "Now why don't you run upstairs and change out of your pajamas? Your father and I will take you somewhere out for lunch." "Okay," Jamie said, before hurrying up to her bedroom. As she got changed, she began to feel slightly better. She knew that as long as she had her parents, everything would be all right. 5 minutes later, Jamie came down the stairs. She'd expected to see her parents waiting for her at the front door, but they weren't there. "Mom? Dad?" Jamie called as she hurried throughout the house. "Where are you?" No one responded. "They must be in the car waiting for me," Jamie reasoned with herself. Jamie went outside. Although their car was in the driveway, her parents weren't there. She even checked the backyard, but that was also empty. They have to be in their bedroom, Jamie thought. With a racing heart, Jamie re-entered her house. She ran up the stairs and flung her parents' bedroom door open. She felt like crying upon finding that they weren't there either. Desperate, Jamie picked up the telephone which sat on the bedside table and dialed her father's cell phone number. It didn't even ring, but instead went straight to a message which said, "This number is not in service." "No, no, no," Jamie muttered as she redialed the number only to get the same message. "This can't be happening." Hoping that her parents were playing a mean joke on her, Jamie searched the whole house yet again. She was devastated to discover that she really was the only person there. Jamie collapsed onto the couch and began to sob heartfelt tears. She'd never felt so abandoned and scared in her whole life. The minutes ticked by slowly, making an hour feel like several days. Finally, Jamie stopped crying and stood up shakily. She had to do something, even if she didn't know what that something was. Jamie quickly decided to look in her parents' bedroom. Maybe they'd left a note for her and she just hadn't seen it. When Jamie reached her parents' bedroom, it was hard for her to enter. However, something inside of her, perhaps a strength she never knew she had, pushed her forward. She thoroughly searched the bedroom, almost giving up until she came across a small box which was at the bottom of the walk-in closet. Carefully, Jamie lifted the box and carried it over to the bed. She sat down and then opened the lid, coughing due to the dust. Jamie reached inside and pulled out a dated-looking diary. With slight hesitation, she opened it and began to read. Dear Diary, May 22nd. It's a girl. I've just returned from the hospital with Sam, and we've learned that our first child will be a girl. After careful consideration, we've decided to name her Jamie Mel Banks. Isn't that such a lovely name, Diary? Jamie is due in 4 months. I still can't believe that I'll be a mother. On a similar note, something unusual happened today. While Sam bought us lunch from the hospital's cafeteria, I went to the maternity ward to visit all the beautiful newborn babies. They were so cute and precious, but very noisy. Anyway, when I was looking at the babies, I saw a new mother, Mrs. Dell, talking to an odd-looking woman who she referred to as Madeline. I overheard Mrs. Dell telling Madeline which baby was hers. A few moments later, Madeline was blessing the baby. After Madeline left, I asked Mrs. Dell what was going on. She said Madeline has supernatural abilities and that she just blessed her newborn baby with good fortune. I was very interested in Madeline's work, so I asked for her telephone number. I've told Sam everything, and he's open to the possibility of having Jamie blessed. After all, it can't hurt to try, right? Jamie paused for a moment to think about what she'd just read. The mere thought of having some strange woman bless her was enough to give her the creeps. She wondered if her parents had actually gone through with the blessing, and if they had, what in the world had possessed them to do so? Feverishly seeking answers, Jamie continued reading. Most of the following diary entries were about her mother's never-ending pregnancy aches and pains, as well as budget-friendly decorating options for Jamie's nursery. Then, as her mother's due date drew closer, the entries began to center around her fears and growing anxieties about the pregnancy, Jamie, and life in general. Soon, Jamie's attention was drawn to 2 disconcerting entries. Dear Diary, September 28th. I've officially been a mother for 10 days. Jamie Mel Banks was born on September 18th at 7:10 a.m., weighing 7 pounds and 5 ounces. I went into labor a few days earlier than expected, but the birth went well, or so the doctors say. Personally, it felt like fireworks were going off inside of me, and I'm certainly still recovering. The important thing is that Jamie is healthy and safe. However, I just can't help worrying. That's why I called Madeline. She came to our house today and blessed our dear little Jamie in exchange for a small fee. Jamie has been blessed with a happy and carefree life, and that blessing will go into effect when she turns 13. Dear Diary, October 30th. Something horrible has happened. When I was out for a stroll with Jamie, I ran into Mrs. Dell. She was absolutely frantic because she'd heard from several distraught parents that Madeline had been practicing black magic. Rumor has it that all her blessings are twisted to take on different meanings. Sam and I are beside ourselves with worry. We just wanted Jamie to be happy and carefree because we know what it's like to struggle. We've faced so many hardships in life, and I can't imagine Jamie ever having to go through the same thing. So far, Jamie seems fine. All she does is cry, eat, and soil her diapers. Nevertheless, I've never felt so much love for a single human being before. I couldn't stand it if anything ever happened to her. It's just so awful, but I'll go insane if I keep dwelling on Madeline's blessing. I'll forget about it until I can do so no longer. When Jamie turns 13. Farewell, Diary. Jamie's heart raced as she flipped through the rest of the diary. As her mother had promised, the remaining pages were empty.